It's only.
I feel like they.
Why you have to be mad?
Sorry, what was that?
Is he Nashville? Am I close geographically?
They've
The
been cooking
contracts.
it up.
The contracts are coming in.
No one knows what he is. He's a big orange monster
What's
with
he?
googly eyes.
He's
and
a gritty.
Okay.
little.
The Florida lead.
What do you think of Owen's bracket? Do you remember it?
It's hopeful.
Welcome to episode 32. We've got a jam-packed episode today. We are covering the trade deadline. This is right after, well, not right after, Friday.
Right after.
Yeah, I mean, it was at 3 p.m. was the 3 p.m. Eastern was the deadline cutoff, and recording at 9. So we have a lot to cover. But before we get into some of the trade stuff, we want to talk a little bit about a couple of recent hockey trips that both Gifford and myself have been on. I think mine's a little more interesting, so I guess maybe we'll cover Gifford's quickly first. He's probably not too excited to talk about his anyways, given the outcome of the game that he attended. So I'll leave it with him.
Yeah. So last Saturday, we made it like a last minute trip to the Sabres Golden Knights game. One of Mal's family members is a big Buffalo fan. And loves the Sabres, so was already going to that game. So we said, hey, we might as well, join along. I'm thinking, Vegas should be able to compete well against the Sabres. Not so much. 7-2 loss. So now I'm 2-3-2 all time in Vegas games. That was also the third shorthanded goal that I witnessed in 3 games this year, all against Vegas, which wasn't great. There was 2 in the Sabres game, and then there was 1 in the Islanders game that I saw earlier in January. So not necessarily a fun road trip. It was still cool to see Key Bank for the first time. I feel like the fans were a lot louder, more involved in this game than I think the other 2 I saw this year. The only thing I would say was this was the first time in all of the games I've been to where I really had a bad experience with a fan. Because most of the time I feel like when I'm visiting all these other arenas, a lot of people will be like, hey, like, how'd you get into like hockey, or like, why are you a Vegas fan? Are you from Vegas? And usually there's a lot of good conversations that spark from that. But let's just say the Buffalo fans are still upset about Jack Eichel, and we did not hear the end of it when we went there.
At least you weren't wearing an Eichel jersey.
No, I wasn't. I was wearing the Winter Classic, and sorry, that probably also didn't help them in that scenario based off of their experience in that jersey.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was rough. It was a Sabres fan behind us started going at us a little bit with some things about Eichel, and it went on for a long, long time. But it is what it is. I mean, Eichel's got a cup, they don't. So
yeah,
Suck it, Buffalo.
exactly.
Yeah, you may have beaten us 7-2 that game, but
yeah, I mean, he at the end, like, I was surprised at the end after he went on for a long while, he actually did turn around and apologize to us about it, which I was surprised that it happened. And then he proceeded to go on about the fact that like this was like the Stanley Cup Finals essentially for the Sabres, because he knew they're not going anywhere. So he was like, for us to compete this well, he was like, this doesn't happen that often. And then he was like, you're probably still going to make the playoffs, and you're probably still going to do well in the playoffs, and we're going to be sitting here wishing that we were you. So
it's all they have.
Sounds bipolar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He definitely was. I mean, he was drinking, so to be expected. But
yeah, I feel like there's, like, when we were there, there's definitely some like people like constantly like shouting random stuff during the game, and happened at the game that I went to this past weekend also, where it's like it always just seems like we're sitting in some sort of section where somebody has to constantly be like screaming about stuff on the, going on in the ice or whatever. It's like, can you guys just like tone it down for a little bit? Like, you don't have to be constantly like making fun of the team or like, I don't know. It's just like annoying to have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But
And then the thing I think that also didn't help the scenario was Eichel was possibly coming back for that Buffalo game. That he doesn't come back, and he comes back then 2 nights later in Columbus.
yeah,
And that was another thing. What, are you scared to play in Buffalo? Like, that's what some of the fans were saying. But it's funny because you do see a lot of Eichel jerseys, a lot of Buffalo Sabres Eichel jerseys still. So some people are like, hey, we still respect who he is, and, I'll still support him. And then you have the other side that's still angry that he got traded, even though I still think it's really Buffalo's fault that he got traded because they wouldn't give him that surgery, and Vegas would.
Yeah, as someone who doesn't have skin in the game, I feel like they kind of screwed over Eichel. Like it wasn't. I mean, it was Eichel's decision, but as a player, like you have those protections from like the Players Association, like make those choices for yourself. So like he was just doing what he's allowed to do, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I've always kind of felt that the hate towards him from Buffalo fans was unwarranted. But, so be it. I'm not going to convince anybody, I don't think, on the other side. So we'll just leave it at that. But unfortunate game for Gifford, and he does cross off another arena, so he's up to 5 now.
That's my consolation prize was seeing the arena for the first time.
Yeah, you get that. And so I crossed another one off my list as well. Bree and I went down to Capital One Arena for the Sunday game versus the Coyotes. So that was my 13th arena now that I've been to. So almost getting there towards halfway. And yeah, we drove down on Saturday morning. It's like almost 7 hours, like 6.5 or so hours. So definitely a long trip, but we had a good time. Game was at 1:00 on Sunday, and we were meeting up with Sam from the show. I had not met him before in person for the first time, so that was pretty cool. That we were able to get the same seats because he had already bought those tickets like a while in advance, and it just so happened that we were able to get the 2 seats next to him. So that worked out really well. Got to meet him and Kelsey.
Say something about the attendance for the Capitals this season.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they were lower bowl, 100 level section seats, which we got for, I think it was like 120 or something like that. 123 or whatever. So I was pretty happy with the value that I got. I thought the seats were pretty nice. So that was fun. The arena was pretty cool, and so while we were there, Sam had his party hadn't arrived yet, and we found our seats, and I heard somebody behind me say like bread, and I was like thinking maybe it was like someone from Sam's like party that I hadn't met yet that like knew who I was, but they hadn't arrived yet. And then I turn around and this gentleman who I later was introduced to, his name's Tommy W. Shout outs to you, Tommy. He said that he knew me from the podcast. So it was a surreal moment, given the current size of the show. We're not exactly superstars in the media world right now. Yeah, I said at the time.
I still can't believe it.
I know, like we were texting during, like I texted the group a little bit after we met him, and I was like, yeah, the odds are pretty astronomical, But
I think he's a paid actor. I think Sam paid him.
Exactly.
Sam, I don't think Sam didn't even know that happened because he wasn't there yet, and then I like told him like during the game, I was like, yeah, I don't know if you heard, but like. Yeah, this guy behind us, like, he recognized me from the show. And he's like, dude, no way. Like, that's crazy. So it was a really cool moment. We took a photo with him, which we can provide for you all.
Right here.
Yeah, right here. And it was just made me really happy, and I couldn't believe the luck,
So crazy.
that caused that. Like, just some random game. He's from the Hershey area, so he goes to a lot of the Hershey Bears games. They just happened to be down in the DC area for the weekend to go see the game. It's like, I think he said it was like a 2.5 hour drive or so for them. So yeah, they don't get down there that much either. So all the stars just kind of aligned in order to make that happen. And
Did you ask him how he even found the podcast?
I meant to, and I didn't. I wish I had said, like, how'd you find us, because that would have been some helpful
Or
information.
just like friends and family watching, but because also I was like, maybe if it was in like local to where you are, I'm like, maybe it's some weird like YouTube algorithm. But like you said, you drove 6 or 7 hours.
Yeah.
Like, insane.
Yeah, so
and like it
was
would
all
be
pretty
one
cool.
thing if it was like the same game, but like in the same section, like right
Like
next to you,
right, yeah.
right behind you. Like, what are the odds? That's
Well, I think
that
you
is
said it
crazy.
best, like astronomical. We
Yeah.
got like 10 viewers an episode.
I know. So I was just really blessed by that experience, and Tommy, we really appreciate you reaching out, because he could have even just like not said anything, and I would have never known. So I was really happy that he did say something, and he knew it was me. He even told his buddy, he's like, dude, no way, like, Brett is here, like, that is so insane. So really happy about that, and maybe he'll comment on this episode, or maybe we'll get him on here at some point if he's interested, because I'm sure we'd like to hear more from him. But yeah, so that was
Shout
the
out
game.
Tommy.
Shout outs to Tommy, and the Caps did lose that game. They got their butts handed to them by the Coyotes 5-2. Didn't get to see Ovi score, unfortunately. He had, I meant to look at the final total. I think it was like 9 or 10 shots on goal. Like, he was ripping shots, and he got really close a couple of times, but wasn't able to cash in. So that was unfortunate. I would have really liked to have seen an Ovi goal during the game, but I still had a lot of fun. Got to see the cup banner, which I was sort of making jokes like, oh, boo, and they had a little section in the concourse dedicated to that 2018 run, and there was a framed photo of the save with the puck from that save in game 2. So that was kind of cool just to see. And they have all sorts of other stuff, like how they had a Washington W with like filled with all like the hats from different hat tricks, and they had a little display with all of the players' sticks that they used this year. So just cool to see a new arena, and cross that one off the list. We got back at pretty much midnight on Monday, so it was a long day, but glad we got to cross that one off the list.
I was curious, so I had to look. Ovechkin had 8 shots in that game. I also think, I don't know if you realized, but the now Golden Knights right winger, Anthony Mantha, did score in that game. So you did see him before he was a Golden Knight.
That's true. Which, we'll get into that. We've got obviously lots of trades to cover. I don't know if we want to save that for the final discussion, because you have a couple other things that happened non-trade related. We did have a coach fired and a couple other minor things. So Lindy Ruff finally gets fired after the chanting from last season that then was unwarranted, because they went on a great run, and then he just wasn't the fit this year. So he's fired, and Travis Green is the interim coach, who was a former Vancouver coach for a little bit there. So we'll see how the final stretch goes for the Devils. I don't think they're going to be able to seriously push for a playoff spot, but we'll see if they can get the most out of him, and then if they're going to stick with him after this season, or if they're going to look for someone else for a permanent role, whether that's outside of the organization or within it. I don't know. Haven't really got any inclination from management at this time, but it was good that they at least like did something that I think the players and obviously a lot of fans have been clamoring for a while, which was, we just need a change of pace. It was probably 2 months too late to really make any serious difference with this season, but I don't know. I guess what are your guys' thoughts on the timing and the rationale behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the thought process that if it's a consideration that you're going to move on, you might as well move on now and see if maybe you can have this new coach come in and make a push to the playoffs. When you think of it, they're only 6 points out right now of a playoff spot with 1 game in hand. So, I mean, it's going to be tight regardless in the Eastern Conference, but you think they're not out of it just yet. So, I mean, if this coach can get them, get the guys to rally behind him, maybe they do make a late push. But I'd say, get started sooner than later. They'll get, he'll get some experience this season. And then if they continue on with him next year, then they're already in a better spot. They're not, waiting to the off season to make that move and going into preseason for the first time with the new coach.
I feel like I've said this with like every coach firing this year, that I'm like, well, you gotta try something. Like mostly teams that have been like playoff bubble and losing. Like, I mean, the Sens are an exception to that rule, I guess. But like if you're a middling team, it's like, I mean, if you've already tried, getting another player or something, the easiest thing to do is like, well, we can get a new coach and see if that fixes anything. And I mean, statistically this year, at least it seems like there's been a bump in like almost every team when they fire their coach, and like whether it's lasted or not, there's like a scale from like Edmonton all the way on one end where it seems like that magically fixed everything, or coincidence, whatever you want to think, and then like the other end where it's like it maybe you got like a win off the first game with the new coach and that was it. So it's like might as well try it, I guess. Like Gifford said, maybe a little too late, but worth a shot, I guess.
Yeah, Travis Green did not get a win in his first game with as head coach. So one of the rare instances this season. I think a couple other. I know Jacques Martin, I don't think got his first win either. Maybe a couple others, but yeah. So we'll keep an eye on it. And obviously they had some trade deadline moves today, which are also going to impact their ability to compete this year because they sold off a couple of pieces. But yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. One other thing of note, which we hadn't really talked about, but the Predators had been riding pretty high. Andrew Brunette, the head coach for the Predators, they were going to be going to the Sphere to see a U2 concert, but with the way that the team had been performing, Brunette canceled the appearance, so the players didn't get to go because he thought that they needed some accountability, and then they went on an 8-game win streak after that before losing to Montreal. I think it was 2 nights ago, maybe last night. I think 2 nights ago. So I guess that worked, and yeah, now they're in a wild card spot. They're actually in wild card 1 right now, so they're not competing for one of the top 3 spots in the Central. It's going to be some combination of Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg, for those guaranteed, but they do look like they're a solid wild card team, and yeah, you just got to get in. So good on Brunette, I guess, to deprive them of some complacency as far as just trying to get to the game. It's like, yeah, or not the game, excuse me, the concert.
Yeah, I think it was actually Barry Trotz, but well, it might have been to both. But I think
probably
Barry Trotz's name mentioned
group
by
decision, yeah.
Elliot Friedman, but yeah, I mean, it sucks for like the staff because they were going to be part of it too. And I mean, that was like it was, I guess, controversial when it came out. Like people were on either side, but everyone was like, I pretty much agree that like, yeah, it sucks for the staff. Like they didn't deserve this.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we're not playing. We're doing our best, you know.
Yeah, they did their job, and like also the players can afford to go to a concert whenever. But
true that.
Yeah, and the other thing I just had down for this was like Yossi on this win streak's been getting like 3 points a night, just like casually.
He's still doing it.
No one said anything about him all year.
I know it has been very quiet. I haven't heard much of anything about really the Predators like season for the most part. Like
Yeah.
I feel like they haven't been talked about a ton. They're not like a super big market, but they're usually pretty
He was getting
competitive.
forgotten in the middle.
Yeah, yeah, especially because of the way that the season ended last year. A lot of fans were not expecting them to really be strong contenders. Maybe they would push for a playoff spot. I think some people weren't sure because they did sell some pieces at the deadline and wasn't sure what the direction was going to be as far as how strong the rebuild would be, or if it was more of a retool. You know, they signed O'Reilly and whatever. So yeah, they're doing what they've done for most of their franchise existence and being pretty competitive and usually making the playoffs, which it looks like that's what they're going to do again this year. Still got some time though. Only a couple of teams really pushing back on that. Calgary, St. Louis, Seattle are probably the biggest ones, and then it's kind of a drop off after that. So the wild card race is not really that close in the West. Maybe it's a little bit closer in the East, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I definitely say teams like, I mean, the Flames, are you still considering them in the race, especially when they're selling off so many pieces right now at the trade deadline? It's like they're kind of settling into not probably making the playoffs and just moving on to next season. But we can talk about that more as we get to the trade deadline piece. But yeah, I agree. The East is definitely going to be interesting when it comes to wild card more than the West.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of extensions recently. We'll probably get into them more after we talk about some of the trades, but the big one was Elias Pettersson, the forward, not the defenseman, because there are two of them, both on Vancouver. But yeah, the big name one, who there were some rumors that he wasn't gonna sign an extension, and that he was gonna potentially be traded, which would have been, a pretty blockbuster trade, but it doesn't happen. He always wanted to stay there, and he was kind of just trying to get the best deal. But big relief after that. He signs an 8-year, $11.6 million per extension. So yeah, after the seasons that he's had the last couple of years, good for him to get paid, and I'm sure Vancouver fans are happy that they're not moving on from him. He's one of the best players, arguably the best player they've had since the Sedins. So not happy as a Vegas fan to have him stick around. I would have loved to see him go to like Carolina, was one of the rumors as far as like potential trade target if that was going to be the route that they were going to go. But that doesn't happen, and yeah, he's going to be putting pucks in the net for years to come for Vancouver. So that was the big one. There's been some other big extensions, but yeah, we'll dive into those in a little bit.
Ivan got signed.
Yes. Who was that? Colorado that signed him?
Yeah.
The prospect from I think it was the 2022 World Juniors for Russia. Ivan. I think his middle name was Ivan too, or maybe that was a mistake or something. But yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah, I remember that on like the draft. I'm like, there were more than just two Ivans in there.
Yeah.
Well, I guess since the Pettersson signing, there were three major signings according to TSN. If you want to just go through them real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rasmus Sandin, caps, 5 years, 4.6 per.
That was a good one.
Any thoughts on that?
I think it's good that they locked him up, because at like when they first made that trade to acquire him, I thought that was a great deal for the Capitals. And he's looked pretty solid in his short time there. So yeah, to lock up a young defender that actually wants to play for the Capitals is a really good deal. I thought they got good value for that contract too.
And then the Flyers decided not to trade Nick Steeler, instead signed him to 4 years, $2.7 million per. Another good one, I'd say.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty smart move. The expectation was they were gonna move on from one of Sealer and Walker, and the other one would be signed to an extension. So that's what ends up happening, and I don't know if they really could have gone in a poor direction there. I think they got good value. How do you know how old Sealer is?
He is 30.
30. Okay, so
Which is older than I thought, honestly.
yeah, a little bit older than I thought, but I don't think they're like spending a whole lot on him, and they're still getting him at maybe a little bit past his prime years, but still good value in my opinion. Not great, but pretty good.
And finally, the Panthers signed Gustav Forsling to 8 years, 5.75 per. He currently leads the league in plus minus, if you care about that stat at all.
He's had a really good year. I know a lot of people were really happy with that extension. I think they signed Gadjevich also to an extension the same day. Not nearly the same level of player, but yeah, that I think 8 by what was it 5.75 is really solid value for Forsling with how he's played the last couple of years for Florida. So yeah, I think that one's going to age really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's looking to possibly have a career, like you said, last 3 years with Florida have looked good, and he's possibly looking at a career year this year with Panthers when it comes to goals and points.
Yeah, so I think I don't know what is he like the first pair D man for them probably, or maybe second line. Like I think if he's playing first line minutes, that's definitely really good value for like your number 1 or number 2 D man. If not, it's still pretty good, and they seem to find a way to attract free agents and trade targets with some of their assets and things like that. So
Daily Faceoff lists him as the number 1 D pairing with Ekblad.
Okay, yeah.
I just looked that up too.
That's what I figured. So yeah, I think that's a really solid move for them, and yeah, they just look really primed to make a deep push again this year. After today, after the moves that they made. So yeah, things are looking up for a Florida franchise that has been struggling for a long time to have any sort of relevance and consistency as far as pushing for even playoff spots. So happy for them.
I was looking at our note sheet. I didn't realize, I don't know what podcast episode this came up in, that Dean had predicted the Canucks and the Panthers for the 2019 Stanley Cup, but like you might be looking at this year. You might not needed to wait until 2029 for that.
That's true. Yeah, that was. I'm trying to think how early in the year it was. It was early enough where I didn't expect either of those teams to be very good.
Yeah, right.
So.
Yeah, honestly, that has crossed my mind today. I was literally thinking like, okay, after today's deadline, like teams that I do think are best equipped to make a deep run and potentially face off in the finals, and Vancouver versus Florida was definitely one that I had in my mind. Obviously, there's some ties there, like with the Luongo trade, so that would be kind of fun, and both teams again not having won a Stanley Cup, so it would be another guaranteed new Cup winner matchup, which I'm always a fan of. So that would be a fun one. Obviously, I'd like Vegas to be in the finals instead, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what I think is gonna happen.
Vancouver is actually the Cup favorite on Money Puck.
Wow. I don't know
I was
how
going
many
to say the
people would have thought that at the
Go ahead.
start of the season.
No.
Yeah, the Panthers are 1-2 right now in the league. Panthers lead with 90 points, and then Canucks are tied for second with Boston. So that's 1-2. So you would expect that they'd essentially be 1-2 in the Cup odds right now. But
Well,
I mean,
Florida's
both
actually
teams, like you
fifth.
said. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe because they didn't do so hot last time, they made it to the finals.
Well, yeah, when they made it to the finals, yeah.
Went into the finals.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did really well up until then.
True.
But yeah, I mean, it would definitely be fun. I'd like to, like you, Brendan, I'd like to see Vegas obviously in the finals, but I mean, that would be really, really fun. I think that both rosters, I think, have a lot of really fun players to watch, and they're both two exciting teams. So that would be cool if Vegas weren't to make it in.
Yeah. The obvious caveat being, of course, Dean wants the Bruins to go to the finals, and obviously we want the Golden Knights to make it, but not up to us.
We can both be happy.
Yeah. Why not?
Well,
Although,
Dean
of course,
wants some
one of us
revenge.
would be sad.
Yeah.
He wants revenge from last year, so.
Well, I mean, it's looking like that the Bruins are going to play Toronto in the first round, which I don't know if I'm excited for or scared for.
I would definitely be excited to see that.
I mean, we're only 1 point out of first, but Florida has one game in hand on us, so it's going to be a tight race. But Toronto pretty much has third place locked up.
I think so, unless Detroit
Bruins-
makes a push.
Yeah, the Bruins just finished their last game of the season, regular season, against Toronto, and swept them, which is cool. But we know from the past that regular season records don't mean anything in the playoffs. But it was nice anyway, especially it was on the
Still
same
fun.
night they celebrated the 2011 Cup win for the Bruins at home. So
Yep.
it was a good night. It was an entertaining game, very scrappy.
Yeah,
very,
it was.
very fun.
That was a fun game. I watched.
It would be a good
that
playoff
game.
series for sure, but stressful because you won't hear the end of it when the Bruins finally lose to Toronto in the first round.
Yeah.
But if we win in Game 7 again, I mean, it just adds
Oh.
to the whole the lore.
Yeah, that would
It should be good.
be lovely. Just the stress of as somebody who, I mean, I do push for the Bruins, of course, but not being the primary fan for a Game 7 is always a lot more enjoyable because it's like,
Yeah.
you know what, if it happens, like, well, I remember when I was watching the Florida versus Boston Game 7 last year, it was like, okay, like when it happened where they won in overtime, I was obviously like sad, but it was also like, wow, that was crazy. Like I could appreciate it a lot more as somebody who wasn't completely devastated,
Yeah,
So
that was just sad.
yeah, it was a tough one. Obviously, not as devastating if it was, further along in the run, but.
Well, I know what it's like losing in Game 7 of the finals too. So.
Yeah, Dean's got his fair share of heartbreak too.
Yeah.
Where Vegas is 2-1 in Game 7s, so we're doing okay. But yeah, a couple other minor things before we get into the meat and potatoes. Well, and this is part of it. So Kuznetsov was waived by the Capitals, and was sent down to Hershey. So I believe he's the highest paid AHL player. I don't know if he actually played in a game or if he just practiced down there. But yeah, that was kind of a shock. Obviously, nobody claimed him. I think that wasn't gonna happen at the cap hit that he's at. But he did get traded today. Going to Carolina, so that was an interesting one, and he was actually he was already at practice later that day for the Canes. I don't know where he was. Maybe I think he might have been in Charlotte because the Bears were gonna play Charlotte, the Checkers. So it was not too far away. They pop by and he's already with the team. So that was kind of different. And yeah, now he's gonna get. At first, it was like just gonna be getting some conditioning with Hershey, but now he's with a new club altogether, and that leaves I think 5 players left from the 2018 Cup run. One of them being Backstrom, who's still with the organization, but he hasn't been playing. So it's interesting to see how quickly the teams disband after winning it. I know the 2016-2017 Penguins teams are also pretty small. I think they've only got 5 players as well. So yeah, it doesn't take very long for things to shake up in this league. And the other big-ish waiver claim that happened, I think it was yesterday. So the Kings waived Anderson Dolan, young defenseman, and Nashville picked him up. So I think there were a couple other waiver claims. I think they also picked up Bjornfoot too, who was on Vegas briefly before he got hurt. So now we don't have to worry about what we're gonna do with him because he's not with the team anymore. So a couple minor things there, but I think if that's pretty much it, we can get into the heavy duty stuff.
And we got Phil Kessel.
Yeah,
and,
so part of the deadline also today was that any free agents that don't sign by the 3 p.m. deadline are ineligible to play this season and the playoffs as well. So Kessel doesn't sign a contract with anyone, so he is ineligible to play, and that's it for his career.
His career? What about next year?
Unofficially, I just find it very unlikely that after all of the time that he had to, get into good condition to play, that he would be able to make a push over the summer and sign with someone else. But I guess I could be proven wrong. I just find that very unlikely.
There was an article yesterday on Nesson, which is like the Bruins broadcast network, saying ex-Bruin Phil Kessel on track to sign with contender. That was yesterday. So, yeah, guess that didn't happen.
Yeah, he had a conditioning stint with Abbotsford, and I think a lot of the scouts were like, yeah,
Not impressed.
he's lost a step clearly. He didn't even really play that much for Vegas during their playoff run, so I wasn't really surprised. Like there are better options as far as like a 13th forward in the league right now, younger players that have a little bit more to fight for. Like, yeah, I'm sure Phil Kessel probably still wants to have some fun and play a little bit more, but not really the same fire in him at this stage in his career compared to some of these younger guys. So
yeah,
happy for him to have had the career that he had, 3 Stanley Cups and a lot of accolades, but looks like to be the end of the playing career for him. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of him in maybe the media. I think a lot of people would be happy to see him in the media in some capacity, or maybe he'll go back to Pittsburgh to join them as part of their organization or another team. Probably not Vegas or Arizona, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, good career.
good career.
That record.
The funny hot dog man.
Yeah, Iron Man.
Yeah.
Phil Kessel. As
That-
everyone would
He'll always have
just
that.
look at he just built like an Iron Man.
That'll always be funny. It's like, really? Phil Kessel is okay, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I could see it.
I'm sure he played through a lot of injuries that other players would have been sidelined for. So good for him.
Yeah, there's some luck involved too, but good for him either
Yeah.
way. One last thing before we get into the deadline news. We got one voicemail. Just hop right into it.
Let's go.
Ready? All right.
Hey, this is Steve, the original Flippo. Just wanted to give you guys an update. That was a great podcast the other night. An update on the 31-32 Bruins. Although they didn't make the playoffs that year, they had a wagon of a team. 4 members of that team, Dick Clapper, Eddie Shore, Tiny Thompson, Cooney Wyland, are all in the Hockey Hall of Fame. 3 of the guys, Dick Clapper, number 5, Eddie Shore, number 2, and Lionel Hitchman, number 3, have their numbers hanging from the rafters of the garden. And Cooney Wyland went on to have a career. He coached the Bruins for 2 years, then he coached Harvard for about 12 years, and he was also an analyst on TV 38 for a brief career, but back then, before they had a delay button, he got fired for yelling out, "He hit the fucking post" on live TV. All right, that's all I got. Thanks a lot. Bye.
I think my favorite part of that is that he talks about the 32-33 Bruins or whatever year it was. Like he watched them like
Yeah.
back in the day.
For the uninitiated, so that was Dean's father, the original Flippo, and he's joking because we were talking in one of our last episodes about that 31-32 team and joking that he remembers that team fondly. Obviously, he's not 100 years old, but I thought that was pretty clever. So thanks, Steve. We appreciate your insight, and yeah, cool to have some of those players in the rafters. I've definitely heard of Dick Clapper and Tiny Thompson.
Mm-hmm. Great name.
Yeah. So that was fun. If you would like to call in, we have a voicemail number in the video description, and it'll also be in the description for Spotify and what have you. So if you're interested, please go check it out. We also have an email, and we are easily accessible via YouTube comments, email, voicemail, what have you.
If you do any of those, you will be on the podcast.
Yeah.
We guarantee it.
So
And maybe if you just happen to catch the same game as Brendan,
you might see
and
me
you sit behind him, you
one of
might
these
see him
days.
as well.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Tommy actually listened to the podcast, heard you were going, and then like somehow found where you're gonna sit. And
Yeah. It's like, oh my
I'm
God,
gonna meet Fred.
I can't believe it. This is such a coincidence. Wow.
Yeah.
What are the odds? It's like, oh, you dropped your wallet. It's like, oh, that's weird. Thank you. No. Great guy.
All right, let's get into the deadline stuff.
Okay,
You wanna
yeah,
start
let's get
by
into it.
your
So,
thoughts on Vegas's deadline and how you guys felt about it?
yeah, so we'll just briefly recap. The first trade was the 5th, so that was Tuesday. That was the Anthony Mantha deal. So Anthony Mantha goes 50% retained salary for 2024 second and a 2026 fourth round pick. So they don't give up any roster players for arguably the best piece that the Capitals had. At least as far as forwards go, he was having a pretty strong year, and he's got one game under his belt with Vegas now after the Vancouver game last night. He wasn't somebody that I had at the top of my list as far as who I necessarily wanted Vegas to go after. I was pushing a little bit more for Buchnevich, especially with having Barbashev already there. Like, I thought that would have been a good 1-2 punch. But the reception from the trade was pretty good as far as Vegas fans. I don't know if Caps fans were overly enamored with the return. I didn't think it was all that bad, but maybe they would have liked to have gotten a prospect or something instead of like the fourth round pick for example. But yeah, I'm excited. I don't know if he's going to be anything more than a pure rental, especially with the cap situation going into this summer. but we'll see how he does. Hopefully he keeps up the scoring that he's had so far this year.
Yeah, I think he's like you said, he wasn't somebody that I didn't even have him on my list as like an option for Vegas. Honestly, I wasn't even looking there. But looking at the player, I think he can definitely add to this team. Like he definitely adds size, some physicality. We definitely needed another winger that can score for us because Vegas is struggling so heavily in that area right now. Just to inject somebody to give a little juice to the team, I think that's good. But I'm in total agreement. I wasn't sure when it was just that trade, but now seeing how the entire deadline played out for Vegas, I definitely agree. I think the other two that we'll talk about are going to be long-term players for this team, and I think Mantha is just going to be a rental, and hopefully he can help us make a long playoff push.
Yep. So that was on Tuesday. There was one other trade after the Labushkin one that we had reported live. Well, not live, but we had caught it live while we were recording. So the other trade was more of a minor one in Curtis McDermott going to the Devils from Colorado in exchange for 2024 7th, originally from Nashville, and the signing rights to a player, Bardakov, I'm not familiar with. So McDermott gets a bit of a change of scenery. Didn't really seem like he was getting much of a role in Colorado, so that was just a smaller deal, and then we had the Mantha deal. I don't know if you wanted to just cover all of the Vegas ones or sort of go chronologically. We've got a couple other.
You're a podcast.
Other
You can do
deals.
what you want.
Yeah. So all right, let's go into. We'll go chronologically, I suppose. I've got the next trade, which there were some rumors about this, and it did end up coming to fruition. Tarasenko is now a member of the Florida Panthers. He's already played a game with them, and he was 50% retained for 2024 fourth rounder, which is conditional in that if the Panthers win the Cup this year, it becomes the third round pick, and then 2025 third. So that would be a 2026 third with the condition there. So they only give up some mid round picks for another strong winger to add to their already pretty stacked forward group. He's wearing number 10 this now with the Florida Panthers. I don't know if you guys saw that. It's just always a little jarring to see like a drastic number change like that, because Oliver Ekman-Larsson is already wearing number 91. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, normally you like flip it if you can and go to 19.
Yeah.
But
19.
yeah, like a random number, I guess.
So, yeah, I think that's where he wanted to go, and some of the other players that went to Florida, it seemed like that was kind of their target destination. A lot of it, they've just had a lot of draw this year with no state tax is a big one, and playing in a warm market, not as much pressure either. Like obviously there's still Panthers fans there that are clamoring for another deep run in a cup, but not nearly the same pressure in some of the other markets like Ottawa, for example. So Ottawa gets a little bit of value for the guy that they picked up over free agency, and I don't think the return was all that bad, all things considered, but it was definitely more of a
buyer. We're talking about like Ottawa getting fleeced, but I mean, there's only so much you can do when the player is forcing your hand.
Yeah.
And I mean, I assume he had like a no trade or modified whatever. So like, I want to go here, and there's not much Ottawa can do. So they did what they could.
Yeah, I think a lot of people didn't have that context necessarily when it first broke. Like, yeah, what is like Staios really supposed to do when Tarasenko says, I'm only going to go to Florida, make it work so I can like go. I mean, sure, it wasn't that aggressive, but yeah, that's what happened. And new scenery for Tarasenko, who's been on a couple different teams now as of late, as he winds down the career. Next, we got so we alluded to this earlier. Sean Walker, who was the other defenseman out of the two that they were looking to either trade or sign. He goes to Colorado, as well as a 5th-round pick in 2026 in exchange for Ryan Johansson. So he had signed there this year, and it just didn't seem like it really worked out. So they were able to the Avalanche were able to save a little bit of money, sending his full contract there, and they also sent a conditional 1st-round pick in 2025 to the Flyers for Walker, with the condition being
Yeah, and the first round pick was more to get rid of Johansson's contract, basically.
Yeah.
I also heard that like Johansson had a bad like locker room presence in Colorado, which you hear these things sometimes.
I had
but,
heard
like,
that as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know. We're not in the locker room, but like, so take that as you will. But there were just rumors of that. So, like you said, it wasn't working out. So,
Yeah.
get some more defensive depth in Colorado.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty smart move. I mean, a lot of people have thought that Colorado had a pretty solid trade deadline. They also acquire Casey Middlestat. They swap him for Bowen Byram in just a 1-for-1 hockey trade.
The old hockey trade, baby.
Which those are always fun.
And it's like both teams got like a good player. Like it's a good trade for both sides. Change of scenery. I mean, Byram's only 22, so like he's a good young defenseman, and like Middlestat's a good center. So
Byram already scored. He scored in his Sabres debut, and it was funny. I saw some Sabres fans tweeting about how they were on the power play, and Byram was trying to direct some of the Sabres players to like move around and get in some other spots. It's like, yeah, clearly. This guy's been playing on a well-coached, like highly skilled, fast team versus like the sluggish Sabres or whatever. And it's like, yeah, clearly.
Hey, go do that thing McCarr does.
Yeah, clearly I'm used to a couple of different systems back in Colorado, but I think that'll be good. Good to get some more youth. Their whole blue line is, under I think 25 years of age. Like they're all 6 of them are really young, and most of them are very skilled. So while it's still been difficult in Buffalo this season, again, things are, at least as far as the decor, look pretty good.
Yeah, if you had to go one way or the other, who do you think wins that trade, or do you think it really is even?
It's tough because they're different positions too. So it's like you're not exactly comparing.
I mean, Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it is. I think it is pretty much even, because you're looking at somebody who's a little bit more experienced, has a few more years under his belt, going to a team that wants that, right? Because they're making the push now, versus somebody who's willing to take somebody who's less experienced in the league, younger, and then Buffalo's filling out the roster with a bunch of young guys, so that hopefully in next year, maybe in a couple of years, that they'll be making their own push. So I do think it works out for both teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, Middlestat had been there for a while, but sometimes that's just the best thing, especially if they. I mean, I'm just curious how like that transpired. Like if it was Colorado calling, trying to move on from Byram, or the other way around, or what. But I think it was a fun trade.
I would think it would be Colorado looking for an additional piece just to help their scoring
probably
playoff time, and then they're willing to give away not a prospect, but a good young guy in Byram, because they want to make this push.
Yep. So then we get into the Henrique and Carrick trades. So Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick, both from Anaheim, are now with the Edmonton Oilers. One of their few moves that they made this deadline. This was a 3-team deal. I'm not going to get into the whole nitty-gritty, but the Lightning retained some salary on Henrique, and they got a conditional pick, and Anaheim does get a first rounder from Edmonton, their 2024 first. So one of the few trades that had a guaranteed first round pick go, because there's been a couple others that there were some conditional firsts. So good on Anaheim. I think they probably got one of the better deals. They did have to retain some salary, I believe. Or did they? Yeah, they had to retain a little bit of salary, but anyways, I thought that was a good deal for Anaheim. The Oilers, I don't want them to get that much better, but they didn't land any of the really big fish that were circling as far as this trade deadline. And Henrique is still probably going to be pretty serviceable. Just curious on your guys' thoughts on that one.
Yeah, well, after Monahan got traded, Henrique was like the best center on the market, which I mean didn't turn out to be true because there were some surprise centers that got traded, which we'll get to. But like at the time, it seemed like Henrique was the best bet if you're looking for center depth. So I mean that's what they got, and they didn't trade any pieces; it was just picks. So I mean, with that in mind, I think they did a decent job.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what general sentiment the Oilers fans have overall for this this trade deadline, because I'm in agreement. It's not, they didn't lose at the trade deadline, they didn't win. It's kind of a middle of the road team. They're definitely adding depth, which is helpful, but when you're watching all these other teams make big splashes, especially teams that you're might be worried about come playoff time. So if Vegas makes, if Vegas is still in the playoff picture, the Oilers would definitely be concerned about them with the Canucks in their roster, and then teams like the Canes even, look at how they loaded up too. So if you're an Oilers fan, I think you're okay with it, but you're probably a little bit disappointed that you didn't land a big guy.
They were probably hoping that there was a little bit more to come from after that. Like, okay, this is a good start, but we're looking for a little bit more.
Yeah, if they I think they would be happy if they had landed Toffoli or Buchnevich or one of them. It doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest guy at the trade deadline.
Yeah. And then last trade on Tuesday was Alexander Wenberg going to the Rangers for a second and a conditional fourth round pick from Dallas, and I know Dean was interested in that conditional pick because this condition was part of another trade.
Yeah, it was a player that's not even involved in the trade. It's a player on Dallas, right?
Yeah, Niels Lundqvist. So the condition is following the previous trade for that fourth round pick that the Rangers had, which the condition being if Lundqvist earns 55 cumulative points over the 2022-23 and 23-24 regular seasons, the pick upgrades to Dallas's 2025 third round pick instead of fourth round pick. So I don't know where his numbers are at right now as far as those last two seasons. But that's just kind of fun. The Kraken potentially could get a better pick just for a player not involved in the trade whatsoever.
Yeah, imagine them making this just do you want to just screw around here and
Yeah, they're playing Dallas, and it's we don't mind if you get a couple extra points. No big deal. So Wenberg, the first piece going for the Rangers, and that was 50% retained by Seattle as well. So I thought that was a good move. He was kind of somebody I was I wouldn't have been upset if we got him. I don't think he was my number one guy, like I said. I was looking more towards a Buchnevich, but still, I think he'll fit in well there. And we'll see how it goes. And then we move into yesterday. First big trade is the Noah Hannafin deal. So This one I don't think was on either of our radars either, as far as somebody that Vegas would be targeting. But this is also a 3-way deal, and so Noah Hannafin and signing rights to Mikhail Vorobyov go to Vegas. The Flyers get a 5th rounder from Vegas, and Calgary receives defenseman Daniil Mirmanov, which I know some people were like, "Who's that?" But he's had like a pretty good year. I think it kind of worked out for both parties in that it was starting to seem like there wasn't as much of a role for Mirmanov with the backlog of defensemen that we sort of have in our system right now. I think it'll be good for him to get another opportunity. I still wish we had him because I really like his potential upside, but he's in Calgary now, as well as conditional 2025 thirds and a 2026 first round pick. So, excuse me. So actually the condition was if we traded that pick, it would change so that the pick did get traded. So Calgary will get the 2026 first round pick from Vegas, because we also traded our 2025 pick in a later deal from today. So yeah, I guess Dean is an outsider. What did you think about the Hannafin deal for Vegas?
I mean, I don't know. I guess giving up first is never a fantastic thing to do. I say as a team, but as a fan of a team that has like no first round picks for the next however many years.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we never have first round picks. So that kind of sucks. But like, I feel like my theory with Vegas is they do this thing every year and go like all out on the deadline, and like, I think they're worried about fair weather fans and like losing, like when they're no longer a good team, losing some fans. Like trying to just keep this short attention span of like, not you guys obviously, but
Yeah.
like a fan base that they don't know if they're actually fully loyal yet. But besides that, I think it's a good trade, just looking specifically at it, like defensive depth. You're not giving up any like core pieces or anything. Again, like the 2025 picks are a problem for another day. And again, I don't know much about that defender, but I haven't heard of him, so it can't be that good.
Oh, Mirmanov.
Yeah.
I was
No,
like,
Hannafin.
you haven't heard of Hannafin?
Yeah.
No, I think what you
Mirmanov.
said about Manoff was good. He's been another guy that's come up when he's needed to and played well when Vegas has had other injuries. And like you said, I mean, Vegas has so many defensivemen in the pipeline that it's going to work out for both of them. Hannafin's already on the top line, or the top D pairing for Vegas, and then Miromanov is hopefully going to continue to stay in Calgary's 6 defensemen, so that he actually just gets more playing time. So I think it works out for both. But like you said, I wasn't expecting this. I mean, I was expecting definitely a winger, possibly a center. Wasn't even looking at defensemen, even though I think the D-core has actually been part of the issues that we've been dealing with this last stretch of games. And then it happened to also work out that it lines up with Alec Martinez going on to IR as well. So
Yeah, and I also
Hannafin
get like,
could be.
I was gonna
Go
say, like when you're a fan of a team,
Yep.
like you obviously see the prospects more. So like it still hurts. Like no matter how good or not they are, like you see them and you know, and like
Yeah.
you're always looking at their potential. And even like I feel like with young guys, you don't see their flaws, like you see their upside. So like any prospect
Definitely
you lose,
true.
like you kind of weigh that more heavily than maybe they're actually worth.
Yep.
Yeah, which I'm
Yeah,
sure
but I
is
think it's good.
why it's always tough to play the whole armchair GM, because it's like, oh, I never would want to give up any of my, good prospects. And it's like, well, wait, I still like some of these lower tier prospects too. So it's like, I know,
Yeah.
we'll just give away, we'll get a really great player for like nothing. It's so easy.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. Turns out sometimes in order to get a really good player, you're gonna have to give up some good players too. So we'll see how this one fares after this season and beyond. But Vegas gets aggressive once again. They find another hole that they need to fill, and we'll move on. Next trade, Joel Edmondson from the Capitals, another piece going to Toronto for a couple of mid-round picks. I think Leafs fans were underwhelmed a little bit by some of their deadline moves, but they have been struggling on the blue line this year, so good for them to get, decent value. I think like a third rounder and a fifth rounder is nothing too crazy, and especially when it's like trying to make a push for playoffs and a cup. Like at the end of the day, those picks are gonna be meaningless. So, then this one is a bit different. Well, not different, but Troy Stecher goes to the Edmonton Oilers, as well as a 2024 7th round pick, originally from Boston, and in exchange for a 2027 4th rounder. So it's like, wow, they're really pushing it out there. Like, that's 4 drafts from now. It's like, sure, whatever. I don't know what the limit is on that as far as how far out you can realistically go, but Edmonton bolsters their blue line a little bit, and I think was that the last trade that they made? I don't remember if they made any deals. I
think
today.
I thought that was it.
Yeah, I think that was it. So a lot of Oilers fans were a little bit disappointed with how Ken Holland attacked this deadline, but they've also been playing pretty well as of late, so it's like, okay, maybe you don't want to mess with it too much. There's always ways to add, but they also didn't have
that's what Lou was thinking too.
Lou. He didn't I think I saw that this was his 4th trade deadline in a row where he made no trades. So
I can do my job.
Poor Islanders fans, just
I'm buying, I'm not selling.
Do something, please. He saw Barry Trotz's quote that the prices were ridiculous, so he's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then I'm just not gonna do anything. I'll rattle off a couple other ones here. Colorado gets involved. Brandon Duhaime, a young defenseman, goes to Colorado for a 2026 third. They also pick up Yakov Trenin from Nashville, so a couple decent pickups. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but I was noticing this, that there were a lot, and I mean a lot, of intra-division trades this trade deadline. Like, I mean, it was very surprising how many that there were. Florida and Ottawa trading, Nashville and Colorado and Minnesota, Arizona and Nashville had a trade. Like, there were just so many. Obviously, the Pacific Division trades as well. There were a ton. There's still more to come here. Anthony Beauvillier goes to the Predators from Chicago, so that's another intra-division one there. That one's for a 5th round pick. Couple minor deals here. Anthony Duclair heading to Tampa Bay, so he joins his, what is this, like 9th or 10th team. He'll now have played for both of the Florida teams. He goes for a 3rd round pick and the rights to the Jack Thompson, who I'm familiar with. So, I think some Sharks fans were kind of hoping that they wouldn't trade him because he was having a pretty good year, and I'm sure it's tough watching this team this season. Like, any bright spots in the year, you probably want to have them stick around for a little bit longer just so you have something interesting to watch. But that was a tough one. And then the last big trade for the day leading up to Friday today was the Gensel trade. So the rumors were going around for a while that Gensel was going to be moved, and he goes to Carolina as well as Ty Smith, who was the defenseman from the Marino trade last season. So they both go to Carolina for Michael Bunting was the one big roster player, and then a couple of prospects, which I'd seen a little bit on some of the scouting for them, but doesn't really seem like any of them are projected to be like super high end picks. I know some of the Penguins fans were kind of upset because they weren't some of like the tier 1 or tier 2 guys in Carolina's organization that they were sort of hoping for. They also get a couple of conditional picks based on if the Hurricanes win the Stanley Cup, so second round pick and a fifth round pick in this year's draft, with the second round pick being a first if Carolina makes it to the Cup final. So they could potentially get a first out of that one, which would be big. But for somebody who's spent so much time with Pittsburgh and was such a big piece, for those Cup runs, or I think it was just the 2017 run, where he had a great year. It was tough to see him go, I'm sure.
Maybe now he can actually make a name for himself instead of, well, it's probably less of a thing now, but it was always like when he was younger that he's only good because he plays on a line with Crosby.
Yeah, no, that definitely was a narrative for a while, and that's another intra-division trade, which it's just
how do you
crazy.
Say the center's name that Pittsburgh got? Very close it. Like CRUS. Cruz Lucius.
Cruz Lucius.
Yeah,
that's a sweet.
That's
name.
a cool name.
That's a fun name.
Yeah.
So they got him, Vasily Ponomarev, and Ville Koivunen. Again, I saw some scouting reports on them, but I didn't really retain any of that information, so I'm not going to try to make something up.
Well, Kuznetsov was inter-division too. Intra-division.
Yep.
And I was reading about that trade. I mean, the Hurricanes. I'd have to look back to see what their previous trade deadlines have looked like, but I think they were from what I read, they were a little bit more active than normal.
Yeah,
talk about
this year they were.
Yeah, and we talk about the Canes as like one of those teams that is always good in the regular season, but then fizzles out come playoff time, and it's like you're not getting enough scoring from your guys. And when you think about, like, I read that Sebastian Aho is the only 30-goal scorer they have, and like really their main weapon. So it's like adding another piece to that. Like Gensel, I think is perfect. And he's at 22. It says 22 goals, 52 points. So that's a huge fish to land on. I mean, he was essentially like you would say the biggest guy to sign. This trade deadline.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Probably one of the biggest ones.
I'd say the center you guys got.
Well,
he wasn't really even on.
Yeah, the one that was on the list the whole time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but the one that was on the list, it was like that was the sweepstakes for this deadline was getting Gensel. So I think it's good for Carolina, and I think they're going to be really scary.
Kuznetsov could do something too. I mean, you only gave up a third round pick for him, so like, could help.
He's clearly
spoilers. We're not there yet.
Clearly not at the same level that he had been like a couple of years ago, but I think they probably got good value for him. I'm definitely happy that Gensel went to an Eastern team and not Vancouver, which was one of the rumors, was that them, or maybe Edmonton were looking, or maybe even LA. So glad to have that. We touched on the Kuznetsov trade. One very minor one, which I didn't even realize, was Subban still being in the league. He goes from the Blues to the Blue Jackets for future considerations. So way to go, Subanator. Still pushing for you. I don't even know if he got into any Blues games this year or if he just played with Springfield, but good for him. Still have people wanting to
Yeah, I had that.
wanting to have him around.
I had that pulled up. He's 30 years old. He has not played a game since he played 4 games, started 3 for Buffalo in the 21-22 season. So
Yeah.
he's been down in the minors.
Yeah. We definitely didn't draft him in the first round or anything.
Yeah, that's tough. Anywho, Kyle Okposo, captain of the Buffalo Sabres, now with the Panthers, which sounds like he was sort of in control of going there too. The team tried to do right by him, sending him down there. So Sabres get only a conditional 7th round pick, which can be a 5th rounder if Florida wins the Cup. And they also got the rights to a player I'm not familiar with. So not much of a return there, but yeah, now they're captainless once again. So we'll see who's next for them. Maybe Gergensons, since he's been there for a long time.
I know he's getting up there in age, but you think the return is small just because, again, you were saying they want to do right by the player and
Yeah,
he's,
not much
he wants to
leverage.
go. Yeah.
So yeah, another piece for Florida, another forward, just to bolster that core. A couple other minor deals here. Young defenseman Ben Myers going to the Ducks from Colorado. Another intradivisional Chad Ruedel going to the Rangers from the Penguins for a 2027 4th. So another 2027 pick. So Ruedel, just a depth defenseman, always good to have your 7th, 8th defenseman or 13th, 14th forwards come playoff time. So good for that. Toffoli goes to Winnipeg. So like what we alluded to earlier, the Devils do end up selling off some pieces. They end up getting a 3rd rounder and a 2nd rounder for him, and they did retain 50% salary. So I thought that was a good move for Winnipeg. They also got Brendan Smith from the Devils, who's a veteran defenseman. So I thought those were both good trades for the Devils. Or sorry, for the Jets. I was a little bit surprised like that. Well, actually, just it was a weird trade deadline for the Devils because they also ended up trading for some goaltenders. They ended up finally trading for them. They get Jake Allen, as well as they swapped out They got Kakinen for Vitek Vanacek. So another Devils and Sharks goalie trade because they also had traded Mackenzie Blackwood over there. So yeah, their tandem is completely different now, which is strange having 2 brand new goaltenders. I don't know if Kakinen is going to be the backup or if he's going to be fighting with Dawes or Schmidt or whatever, but yeah, I just thought it was kind of strange timing. I was watching the Daily Face-Off trade deadline like live coverage, and they were mentioning that it was sort of strange timing and that like they could have just done this, a couple months ago. Maybe they were just trying to push for Markstrom so hard that they didn't want to settle until right now. But it's like, okay, at this stage in the season, like, why wouldn't you just ride out these last couple of guys if you're going to be selling off Toffoli and Brendan Smith, and they also traded Colin Miller as well also to Winnipeg. So
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
weird.
thought-
It seems like they were mostly sellers, but like you said, then they go and get a goalie too. So it's like maybe they're sellers, but they wanted this specific goalie for or a tandem for the future. So yeah, it's strange.
So I'm sorry, it wasn't Brendan Smith. It was Colin Miller. So that was the defenseman that I was talking about. It wasn't both of them, but yeah, Colin Miller going to Winnipeg.
I definitely thought that the Devils' moves here were a little bit confusing. Because Toffoli is their leading goal scorer. So if you're
Yeah.
getting rid of him, that pretty much signifies you don't care about the playoffs this year. And they're kind of, again, one of those teams where it's like, okay, they could still make a late push, but are they really going to make it? And then, like you said, then you trade for this goalie tandem. And the goalie tandem isn't really that inspiring at all. So it doesn't really make sense to me. If it was me, maybe if you're going to sell off Toffoli, go ahead and do that. But just ride with the goalies that you got, and then let's move on into next year.
Yeah.
Especially because Markstrom didn't end up getting moved. Like, since
Yep.
nobody else really, I don't know if they knew how much interest like other teams necessarily had, but it definitely seemed like a thing that could have been pushed off to the summer. And like now, instead of like making a push in the summer for Markstrom, they have to settle for Allen and Kakinen. I mean, Allen's still decent, but I think not quite at the same level as Markstrom, although Markstrom is a little bit older. So, yeah, I guess we'll see how the rest of the season shapes out and what happens with them. But little strange deadline. I'm sure some Devils fans were confused. Maybe we can get Chandler on here at some point to hear his thoughts on the disappointing season for the Devils this year. We'll keep rolling. A couple defensemen swap. Radim Shimmick and Klim Kostin are traded. So Shimmick now with Detroit and Klim Kostin with San Jose. So Kostin's moving around a little bit here. And Detroit also gets a 7th rounder originally from New Jersey. Jason Zucker. So that was another defenseman that had been rumored that he was going to go. So he goes to Nashville. Again, another intra-division trade for a 6th rounder in this year's draft. Now, again, the storyline for this year has been buyer's market. So maybe some other seasons you would have been able to get a little bit more for him. They also moved on from Matt Dumba. He goes to Tampa Bay as well. Or not as well, but he goes to Tampa Bay for a 2027 5th. So, yeah, again, some of these bigger name brand defensemen moving and not getting a ton of value, including Boston Bruins make one of their trades. They only had a couple of trades this time around. Dean, I think you know both of them.
2.
Yeah. The first one being the Patrick Maroon trade, so they acquire him from the Devils for a conditional 2026 6th round pick, which let's see, the condition being it's he only has to play one 2023-24 playoff game to give them the pick. There's also rights to Luke Toporowski. Do you know who he is, or I don't think
I know of him. He's not someone who's probably going to play in the league. He hasn't played. He's only played in Providence.
Yeah.
So it's not really an NHLer. It's probably more of an AHL move, if anything. Yeah, I've never liked Pat Maroon, especially after playing him in the finals in 2019. So I kind of feel like how people felt when we got Garnet Hathaway. I didn't really have any ill will against Hathaway, but Maroon, I'm like, oh, I don't want to see him in a Bruins jersey.
Yeah, it'll be strange.
And going into this deadline, I was like, I want the Bruins either to do nothing or make big moves, signing for a player that we plan on re-signing, no rentals or anything. It's not that kind of year for us. I mean, we did that last year, which made sense. We're going all in, again, based off the season we had. But this year, don't waste anything with rentals. I think Maroon's probably a rental, but since we basically gave up nothing for him, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
And I guess while we're talking about the Bruins, the other trade we made was getting Andrew Peak, I think that's how you say his last name, from Columbus. And depending, Columbus fans seem kind of sad to see him go, but I've also heard the there was like a list of like 5 players not to trade for at the deadline. He was on that, so who knows? I don't know much of him, but we gave up Zaboral, who hasn't played this year. He's been in the AHL as well. He was up and down the lineup last year, and a 3rd-round pick. So again, I don't know how much is left on Andrew Peake's contract, but like they were small trades, so it's like I guess I'm okay with them.
Yeah,
Like
kind of
we didn't give
underwhelming.
up anything that I was upset about. I mean, again, I wish if we were gonna do something, we had done more, but I guess we'll see where this takes us. It's never bad to get defensive depth, especially it just came out a couple hours ago that Derek Forbort was put on LTIR, so he's probably done for the season. So I guess this helps with that. I'm sure that's probably the reason we got a defender.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, what I was reading about Peak was that people were saying that if it was receiving a 3rd-round pick for taking Andrew Peak, that would have made a lot more sense than giving away a 3rd-round pick. And it's specifically because Columbus, as we know, is not a good team. And he is a healthy scratch on that very bad team, which means he's having a very bad year, and you just gave up a 3rd-round for it. So, I mean, I don't have all the logistics into what Boston wants to do, and how Andrew Peak is day to day, because I'm not watching Columbus every night. But I was, from what I've read, that was not a good move by Boston.
Yeah, the hockey insiders were saying Boston must do something in this guy,
Yeah.
which is never a good sign when
Yeah,
you
I
like
know.
the hockey guys are saying things like this.
It's like, oh,
The other thing
that's
is Maroon is still out for like 3 weeks. He's recovering from an injury, so like who knows with him. But I mean, in the past, like Sweeney, you can make arguments about his drafting, the Zaboral.
Zaboral.
But but as far as the deadline goes, he's always been pretty good. So well, I guess I can't judge it until we see him play in the Bruins uniform, I guess.
Yep.
Maybe we just trade for him to be a 7th defender. Who knows?
Yeah, could be. A couple other defensemen move. So Sabres trade Eric Johnson to the Flyers for a 4th-round pick this year. That's decent value for a veteran defenseman. So Flyers fill up that hole from the Walker deal. And they also acquired Denis Gurianov from the Predators for Wade Allison. So a little more of a minor deal. Denis Gurianov was mostly playing with Milwaukee this year, so he hasn't really been at that same level that he was during his time with Dallas. We'll see if he's got anything left. A little minor deal here. There's the Jake Allen trade. We mentioned the Matt Dumba deal. A couple other minor moves. Jack Roslovic, the Columbus boy, goes to the Rangers. 50% retention on that one for a conditional 2026 4th-rounder, which the condition, it could be a 3rd-rounder if the Rangers make it to the Cup final and Roslovic plays in 50% of the playoff games. So we'll see. I feel like that's not too bad. I was kind of surprised. Like, I don't know. I kind of felt like Roslovic would have been one of the guys that they would have kept just because felt like he was pretty excited to play for Columbus, being from the area, and got a new start when he was part of that Line Dubois trade. But yeah, the Rangers. So they get a couple of depth forwards. We'll see how the new guys fare there, but I think they had a decent trade deadline, nothing crazy. And then we got a couple more. The big one being the one we've teased. I'm sure you're already aware of it at this point. But the Hurdle deal. So this one wasn't really on anybody's radar as far as I knew. But yeah, Vegas somehow is able to acquire Tomas Hurdle as well as 2025 and 2027 3rd-round picks from San Jose. So they get those 2 picks in exchange for David Edstrom, who was the 1st-round pick from Vegas, the 32nd overall pick. in 2023 and a 2025 first. So, and another key part of that is that he's still under contract for 6 more years, and the Sharks have retained 17% of that contract.
A weird amount
for the duration, 17.1. So it works out because the total cap hit for Vegas is 6.75 million. So that's probably just how it worked out with the total contract size. So yeah, a lot of turmoil from Vegas haters and general fans of the league, and obviously Sharks fans were kind of upset because Hurdle's been like the heart and soul of the team for a long time, and another intra-divisional one. Like, I really did not expect this at all. Like, it just seemed like a strange decision by the Sharks to obviously help us out. They already helped us out with a goalie trade relatively recently, and I mean, yeah, they get a decent prospect in Edstrom. I was, what happens with Vegas first round picks, I'm always tentatively excited by them because I expect them to not stick around for very long. Which, yeah, the only first round pick that we've kept is Brendan Brisson from I think it was the 2019 draft. So yeah, another first rounder goes, and then obviously the first round pick for 2025. We always like to keep those, so that was a bummer. But this is just a whopper of a deal. Now we've got another center for a long time. He's also recovering from injury right now, so he is expected to return for the regular season, which is big, and we'll see how they manage the cap in order to get that to work. But yeah, I'm just curious on what you guys were thinking when that dropped, because it was seriously like a bombshell.
Yeah, I knew that there was something else coming when you hear that Mantha was getting his some of his contract retained. We knew there was another move coming. Then Hanifin gets some of his contract retained. Vegas is still not done yet, and that's when I feel like people started to get a little bit upset online when it comes to what Vegas likes to do at the deadline. And then when this dropped, then it was like, okay, we need to start looking into what Vegas is doing. And I thought it was funny when a lot of people were saying, don't blame Vegas, blame your GM. Like, if your GM isn't doing this, it's not Vegas's problem.
I mean, they're all everyone's following the same rules.
Yeah,
exactly. Again, super surprised by this. I was surprised that out of the 3 trades they made, that 2 of them were interdivisional, like you said. I was thinking that they were looking at some guys in the Eastern Conference. Hurdle is a guy that we've been rooting against for a long time, so now we'll be rooting for him. And then there was a couple interesting pieces that I thought about this. One is they had already added the condition in about the that first round pick in the Hanifin trade. So these trade talks for Hurdle have been going on for a couple days, and I think they've been under wraps really well.
Yeah,
that no one had any idea that this was going to go down. Because I think they had started these Hurdle, based off of what I'm reading, they had started these Hurdle talks before they had the Hanifin talks. So it's like they kind of ended up going in the opposite direction to Hanifin. They ended up landing first. But it'll definitely be interesting. Like you said, we have Hurdle is under contract for 6 more years. We have Jack Eichel, who has a long contract, and then Carlson is still good for, I believe, at least another 3 more years. So the centers look really good on Vegas for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Well, I'll see if Dean has something first before I had a couple other points to bring up. But just curious as an outsider, looking in on another big Vegas trade, what you thought about it.
Well, first you steal the Sharks coach, now you take their center.
Yeah.
But no, said this, I think, on the group chat, but last year when there were talks about trading Hurdle, like it was someone that I wanted the Bruins to get because he's just like a good center. Like I've always been really high on him. Um, and yeah, I was as surprised as you guys. Like no one was talking about Hurdle being traded this year. But obviously it's a good piece. I was like trading personally, like my team's trading for a player with term, so you're getting that. Um, Obviously a good piece for this playoff run, and then it's your favorite kind of player because they're injury prone, so you can put them on LTIR next year. And no,
Ah,
I'm just kidding. But no, I think it's a good trade, and I'm jealous because I wanted him.
and getting him for that value too, the 6.75 versus the full
Yeah,
eight
that's
point,
nice.
whatever it was, 8 and a little more. Um, like I just am surprised that San Jose is willing to retain for that long, and they've already used up all three of their salary cap retention slots for next year, because they were also retaining on Carlson and Brent Burns for a little while longer. So, like, yeah, now they can't do that anymore. It just seems a little bit strange. Hopefully, they think that they got a good enough value. I mean, we'll see how Edstrom does and what range that 2025 first round pick will be in. Hopefully, 30, 31, 32 range. Uh, but yeah, Bombshell. We'll see when he returns or when he makes his debut. Probably sometime in April would be my guess. But they did say, yeah, he is slated for a regular season return. So
And the other piece that we didn't mention about this was that when they had initially announced the trade, they announced that those third round picks were going to the Sharks from Vegas. So I saw the package as Edstrom, a first round pick, and 2 third round picks for Hurdle
it's like,
with that
whoa.
retention. And that I was like, whoa, that's a little bit much. And then it quickly flipped to no, Vegas is getting these third round picks. And then everyone's wondering what the heck the Sharks were thinking,
Yeah.
you know, giving that away. But the other thing that I thought is interesting is when we talk about all these interdivisional trades. Obviously, the NHL scouts are looking everywhere, so every team is looking all over the place. But those are the players that you see most often. You see those players so often every year. The coaches get more of a chance to look at those guys, down on the ice. So Vegas might have been looking at Hurdle for some time, and then finally this was the year, and it made sense. And for all we know, they called the Sharks last year or maybe 2 years ago and said, "Hey, we're interested," and the Sharks wouldn't budge. And then now they're finally willing to give them up.
And I mean the Sharks are in full rebuild, so it makes sense to try to get some first rounders. And, I mean, I guess maybe they could have gotten more. I feel like, again, we mentioned it was like such a private trade where like no one really knew about it. I wonder if there was more of a bidding war if they could have gotten more. But like I don't know who else had the cap space to do this. I mean, again, other GMs could have done their job better and made cap space, but I think maybe the
Yeah.
Sharks could have gotten more if they said they were shopping Hurdle and like a week ago and let people figure it out.
Yeah, if it was a little more public. And I mean, I guess we don't really know how many of the other GMs were aware that they were looking to move on from Hurdle, but it didn't, obviously none of the insiders really knew much about it except for Bob McKenzie, who was the one who broke the trade, which it's so funny because, like, he's retired, but he just comes out of the woodwork. He has a couple margaritas and announces these bombshell deals. I had a couple margaritas tonight in honor of Bob McKenzie. So shout outs to him, rocking it with the TSN panel. And another interesting angle for the Hurdle deal, just to wrap it up as far as the Hurdle talk. Just curious what this means as far as keeping Marchessault around, because if they're going to be able to afford him, just looking at the cap situation for the summer, they'll have to re-sign Stevenson, Carrier, Marchessault, and a couple Martinez as well. So it'll just be curious to see. I personally don't want them to move on from Marchessault. I know that's kind of like the whole shtick with Vegas is that they are easy to move on from players if they can't afford it. But he's the franchise leader in points and obviously another original misfit. So I think that one would be a tough one to swallow for some Vegas fans. But we'll see how they prioritize the summer. I mean, the expectation was that an extension would happen with Hannafin. That hasn't happened yet, and maybe they're going to wait until the summer. I think with how much they paid, they are trying to keep him around long term. But maybe they move on from some folks in order to keep Marchessault and keep Hannafin and what have you. Probably not Mantha, but yeah, it'll be interesting. But we'll table that for after the playoffs are done and after the season is wrapped up. One last trade to quickly cover is Connor Dewar, another young defenseman, going to Toronto. So they really weren't picking up anybody super big, but they tried to bolster a little bit of their decor. They send over 2026 fourth rounder and some player rights. So that pretty much closes it. There were a couple other trades that we didn't mention, but they were pretty minor. A couple goalie swaps and some minor league deals. So it was a pretty robust trade deadline. I didn't get the number for how many trades there were today. Let me see. Looks like 23. There were definitely a lot more. Yeah, like there were some trades a couple of days prior to it. But yeah, it always comes down to the wire, and the hurdle deal was right under the wire too. Like this was like 250 or so is like when this was all breaking. Like, oh my gosh, it always seems like there's one more big thing to announce, and they were able to get it under the wire. So that concludes the deadline, and now we'll see how these players pan out for their new teams and what the playoff picture is going to be looking like. We've got a little bit more than a month to go before the end of the regular season, and we hope you guys are along the ride for us or with us.
It's almost playoff hockey time.
Yeah,
this time of the year.
I am getting excited. But yeah, if that's all, I think that's all we got. And there were some other extensions, but I think we could probably save those for another time. Especially because I don't always know the most about what sort of value is expected of these guys. But we'll close it there, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to. Well, I'm sure there's somebody that wants to be known as an anti-Semite.